Welcome to these meetings with the Scrutiny Committee. We have apologies from the Scotty and from Rebecca Putin. Is there any other apologies?
Just in case, Karen.
Please go. We have Leslie watching, I think, that's substituting for Rebecca today and for Children's Services. So welcome along. Okay. So the order of business as per the agenda, unless everybody told you different. Any declarations of interest can be made now or at any time. Next is previous meeting, 4.1. Any matter of item. Members happy to correct record. 3, confused. Action log 4.2. Several areas under proposal. Any comments?
We've not only on new bars, but also the situation that concerns the councillors relating to applications and reduction of page 21. Page 21.
Nick, do you want to make any comment on that?
So I can give an update when I get a general update. Right.
Yeah. Look. Any other issues? And any member party for the recommended closure? Section of Crooked Primary School in Nursery. Sure.
So this report is for noting. The school and nursery were inspected in February of this year, and the report was published 2 months later in April. The nursery was rated as good for learning, teaching and assessment and securing children's progress, and the school and the ASN provision were greatly satisfactory for learning, teaching and assessment and raising attainment and achievement. There were a number of strengths identified, including the positive relationships between staff and learners, the supportive and positive ethos across the nursery, school and ASN unit, a strong sense of belonging, writing at first level, and staff being responsive to needs. In terms of areas for improvement, the school are asked to continue to focus on planning for learners accessing the provision, raising attainment or raising expectations of learners to ensure pace and challenge, and to improve the quality of observations in the nursery. In summary, despite the head teacher only being in post for 5 weeks when the inspection took place, HMI were confident in the school's leadership and their capacity for improvement, and no further visits will be made in relation to this inspection. PRNS members are asked to note the positive inspection outcome and to congratulate staff on their daily commitment to the children and families of Cookie.
Questions, comments? David?
Thanks, Derek. Yeah, happy to move this, note the content, and absolutely pass on congratulations. Just a quick question, Michelle. In more general terms, it's not specific to Cookin, but the areas for improvement where teachers need to plan learning experiences that take greater account of children's individual strengths. Is this something that's becoming more prevalent across our whole kind of director of education, all the schools, let's call it that, in terms of, is this around the increasing percentage of additional support needs within schools? And is there therefore some more high level plan for supporting schools in being able to do this?
Yeah, certainly in my quarterly reporting, I will note, or one of the items I'll note is the fact that we are strengthening and have strengthened our learners planning and also our ASN procedures, so that hopefully schools can better meet learners' needs. Obviously, this was specific to cooking and relates to certain individuals within that school, but it is something that we are focused on in terms of quality improvement visits that we make to all of our schools throughout the year.
Good, thank you. Debbie?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just really pleased to see that Michelle, good report. We transparency the operations of my daughter's school, but given that it's over 20 years since she left that, safely coming, and in fact it wasn't even school she went to, wasn't even this building, it was the old building. So I am really pleased to see this report coming to PNS. Thank you.
I'm happy to use also recommendations to congratulate the head teacher, people, parents and staff. Thank you. And 5.2, National Traumatic Inspection. Yeah.
Chair, so again, this report is for noting. Midlothian Education Service was inspected in October 2024. The focus of the inspection was on how effective Midlothian education services in supporting schools to improve the quality of provision, in particular in relation to planning, quality assurance and professional learning, as well as targeted and universal support. So you will see from the report that the outcome was positive and validated our own self-evaluation of our strengths and areas for development. You'll also note from the report the vast majority of the next steps are continued to. So things that we are already doing as a service are already underway. You will also see contained in the report the progress or the actions that we have taken since that inspection visit in October 2024. And as I say, our commitment to do the very best we possibly can. The inspection for Midlothian was part of a national thematic, so all 32 local authorities were inspected in September and October. And you'll also see contained in the report the national findings and the recommendations that flow from that. Obviously, we are noting the recommendations for Midlothian, but also the national picture, and look forward to working with our national partners on some of the actions raised within both. In summary, PRNS members are asked to note the findings and acknowledge the daily commitments of staff to improve the education for all children and young people. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Now, let me just ask a question for clarification, please. In terms of the recommendations, it's all continued until that. So we get to the end, but it says views are still state assessed as a strategic resource. Again, never mind.
So
By that end.
no, it's a free resource. So some of our school leaders are trained by HMI and are deployed to inspect other schools beyond Midlothian. So they are trained in terms of the expectations of the inspectorate, and also, gain a great deal from inspecting other nurseries, other schools, etc. So those associate assessors then are a resource that we can use in Midlothian. So at the moment we have 6 associate assessors that go off and inspect. And what the findings recommended was that we could make better use of them strategically to help us improve. So that's what that relates to.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Michelle. Again, happy to endorse all that. It shows a wealth of work done by the department. And you were possibly asked this question in Cabinet by Councillor Scott as well. Continues to grow the UNCC CLC People Parliament. Plans for a People Parliament are progressing well. Just can we get a bit more on that?
Yes, but by all means. So one of our education support officers, Jen Hodson, is responsible since Gail Curry left and was replaced. She's now taking on Learn a Voice. She has presented to the education team proposals around children and young people's partnership. So again, I'm happy to bring that to cross-party for you to explore in more detail in terms of the plans we have in place. But yes, we're hoping that pretty soon.
Cool. Thank you very much.
There's striking bits of data that we've discussed before. 35% of children in primary, 49% of young people in secondary school have difficulty supporting with learning. It goes back to the question of whether you're over-diagnosing what may well have been a hidden problem for many years before. The second thing which jumps out at me is the elephant in the room is we all love Scottish education. My father was a teacher and we're very proud of it. We tend to be self-congratulatory about it, but we know that in terms of the PISA ranking, Scotland is drifting down, and there doesn't seem to be, unless very much reason to think that can be reversed in a hurry. I'm sure it will take time. But on page 34, one of the positive things that I liked was that Midlothian looks beyond Scotland for innovative approaches and professional learning opportunities. I just wonder if you've got any examples of us looking beyond the Scottish bubble into how the rest of the world is tackling education.
In terms of your comment about over-diagnosing, across primary and secondary, Midlothian have 44% of their children that have an additional support need, and that can range from a temporary support need, such as bereavement, or illness, through to something that is lifelong, whether that is autism, etc. Regardless of whether there is a diagnosis or not, we have a legal and moral duty to meet the needs of the children and young people that we have. So although there is a greater increase in diagnosis, and there are also incredibly long waiting lists for people, whether it's neurodiversity or whatever, the fact is that we have a duty to meet the needs of those children, and that's obviously what we do. Identification is important in terms of the strategies that are then employed and the supports that are then put in place. So I'm less concerned about the percentage, but what I am concerned about is that we're meeting children where they are and helping them thrive.
I don't dispute that, but I still think there is an issue. The problem is that we then segregate a large part of the school population, cotton wool, to how they're brought up. They'll come to later adult life with a huge bash against the fact that it is a nasty place full of competition. You can't be put in an incubus for the rest of your life. It's segregation aspects of what we're doing. I feel is disturbing. I'm not aware that anyone is bothering to debate it.
Segregation rate what? Segregation rate what?
Well, by identification, you start to think that.
I think if I can just reassure you that the vast majority of our learners who have an identified support need, those needs are met in mainstream classes. We have only between 5 and 7% of our children and young people that are, in a full-time provision because of the complexity of needs. So the vast majority of our learners that we have in Midlothian are educated and their needs are met in mainstream classes, either through approaches by the class teacher or the additional resource, whether it's a learning assistant or whatever.
Or additional time to complete exams. One way is a range of these things, but the trend of the numbers leads to the question whether this is real and whether we're tackling it in the best way.
So I'm really seeing that most children are and I'm being I've helped to try and get back into mainstream education. So the path to get back in.
Yeah, yeah.
Just make sure I'm comfortable with how I'll say.
Yeah, no, and I don't think an additional support need, you know, defines the individual. As I say, the vast majority of our young people are in mainstream classes, you know, and are supported. Where we have people, you know, in provisions, it may be because of the complexity of need that provision, you know, has to be for the majority of their school week. But if there is a possibility for a young person, you know, to access that provision, but also to have that shared placement with, you know, their mainstream class, that ultimately is the goal.
Tying this up with the international aspect of my question, are other developed Western European nations having the same experience?
Yes. Yes. So to pick up in terms of looking beyond, we are working with our Four Nations colleagues in terms of, you know, education reform, and are involved in professional learning opportunities, you know, with Ireland, with Wales, England, you know, and Scotland. And, you know, we're also part of the Associate of Education Advisors as well. So we're continually gathering information from others. But in terms of the level of need, absolutely, that's something that's reflected both nationally but also internationally.
Thanks, Chair. And just a sort of follow-on question on that. I don't kind of get where Pete's coming from, but just to clarify from my mind, it's not the educational authority that is diagnosing these additional needs,
No.
is it?
No.
But we may on occasion refer, but ultimately it comes down to, you know, if a parent is looking out for the best interest of their child or parent or guardian, then they're potentially taking them and getting a diagnosis. And once that's obtained, we then have the duty to meet the needs.
The duty exists. So in England, for example, you have a record of need. So a diagnosis allows you access to additional support and resource. We don't have that in Scotland. We have Getting It Right for Every Child. So regardless of whether the child has a diagnosis or not, you know, we have a duty to meet the needs of the child. So although there are more people awaiting diagnosis, part of that is, you know, personal affirmation in terms of, you know, who they are and you know, how they can be supported. But that doesn't change our legal obligation in terms of our duty to meet the need.
Which is fair, but I guess where Peter is coming from a little bit is that self-affirmation thing, which is a dangerous topic in Scotland, I know, but that kind of does have a little bit of grey area. It'd be interesting to know, if they're not in here, kind of the numbers of self-affirmed needs being met. Versus medical diagnosed needs. Interesting. So just I mean, not that it would necessarily prompt any action, but I think the interesting number to look at.
No. Okay, Russell.
Yeah, could I maybe just then ask a supplementary here? Because I don't feel I'm getting the answer, Michelle, that I think was to the question that was being asked. If we're talking about 44%, and you're saying, Councillor Smith, follow-up question with regard to is it all diagnosed? My understanding was, and you said yes, my understanding was that's the medical side of things, but there are children in school who, for example, I'll use the old one, can't do sums, so they need additional help to do that. So that's a kind of in and out. Now, are we seeing a trend now of an increase in that? For example, with vocabulary, you know, arithmetic, these kind of things that aren't medical necessarily, that are diagnosed by the teacher, because teachers now have to make assessment on every child, keep a record, as we all know. And it's just trying to work out that, because when we talk about ASN increasing, which, you said it's international. But I'm just wondering if we're getting caught up in a two-tier system, and those people that have got a medical situation are quite different from those that will come in and out of the system as they go through the school.
So each year we have to submit data to Scottish Government in terms of the profile of our learners and those that are experiencing barriers to learning. So some of that can be through medical diagnosis. Some of it can be, as you say, dyslexia, dyscalculia, etc. At the end of the day, Midlothian, has 44% of its learners that have an additional support need. And as I say, the vast majority of those children access mainstream classes every day. In terms of the shift, what we have noticed, particularly post-COVID, but it was happening before COVID, was we've seen a significant increase in the number of children with neurodiversity and those, social, emotional, behavioural needs. They are the two growth areas that we are seeing, across the region, and that's why we went through the review in terms of our ASN teams, and we have changed the teams to be able to respond to, ASD, neurodiversity, communications, etc.
Okay, thanks. And you're just following up on that, Cheryl. So the 44%, is that a mix of medical diagnosis?
Yes.
And the learnings?
It's the totality of the need.
It's clear in this year, I think we talk about there being this dramatic rise, is it's really a case, or it's part of the case that we now know, for example, when I was at school, dyslexia wasn't a thing that we need to learn. And nobody knew what dyslexia is. Staff are now trained to spot kids that are dyslexic. Like my nephew went through primary school, secondary school, wasn't until he went to college that somebody says to him, "Look, you test me for dyslexia," and it came back, that's exactly what it was. And I had a brother that could only write a check for £6 because he thought he could spell at the time, but nobody cared, was dyslexic, and it's his son that's now been diagnosed as dyslexic. And I think a lot of these things are just, there are a lot of youngsters now in mainstream provision that was never made mainstream provision many, many years ago.
Yeah.
So it didn't include. So I don't think there's a massive rise. I just think it's now a lot of
identification.
It's been identified a lot now.
Yeah.
That'd be fair to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? If not, can I read the recommendations, and open inspection and acknowledge the ongoing commitment to staff to improving the quality of education. Okay, thank you. Education performance report. Cheryl.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this report details the performance of both the education and CLLE services between the period of January to April 2025. In terms of education, as you know, we have an ambitious plan to raise the attainment and achievement of all. And you'll see in the report the positive progress that's been made in relation to the key areas of learning, teaching and assessment, curriculum, attendance, relationships, equity and support. Some of the highlights in the report include the work that we've done to address some of the areas of concern relating to our ASIL data. P7 has been a key focus for us this year. We've put in place core numeracy programs to help universally, and we've also very carefully tracked our data to ensure the overall impact that we are now seeing and will report to Scottish Government during the summer. The Raise the Attainment team have been continuing to support the core schools, and again you'll see from the report a 15% improvement in those schools. We've introduced TRIO, so that's 3 head teachers working together, and again you'll see the positive impact that they are having in building confidence and helping us to achieve our ambition of a self-improving system. In terms of attendance, Scottish Government continues to issue our fortnightly reports, and again, thankfully, Midlothian continues to be in the lower half of the local authorities that are reported with the highest absence. Work continues with an engagement toolkit to help work with those that aren't attending school through a mentoring intervention programme. We also, again, work in partnership with the educational psychology team, family wellbeing service and homeschool practitioners to work with families to, again, help improve attendance. There has been an enormous amount of activity in the area of additional support needs and inclusion, with 90% of key policies and guidance developed or completed this session, and new systems introduced to track and monitor progress and ensure our workforce is as skilled as they possibly can be. Over 1,000 people have been trained in safe, connected and ready to learn, which again is building confidence of staff to engage with our learners each day. We do recognise that there's still further work for education to do, and although we have made really positive progress this year, we're still not totally on top of our complaints, and that will continue to be a focus in terms of meeting the timescales. Our secondary exclusions are not where we want them to be, and we have met with secondary head teachers very recently to look at the trend detail and the strategies that we need to adopt to reverse this. This session, we've seen record levels of staff absence, and this is worrying in terms of our commitment to our children and young people. We continue to work with HR and trade unions on this aspect, and the educational psychology team have also introduced rebreathers, which are reflective spaces to support staff and to focus on their well-being and to sustain attendance work. In terms of CLLE, again, you'll see from the report pleasing progress made this quarter in terms of employability, youth work, adult learning and community capacity building. Some of the highlights include the completion of the childcare review and the steps taken forward, the targets for No One Left Behind being met, the scheme for the establishment of community councils completed and approved, and the training that CLLE are undertaking in food hygiene, first aid and barista, and of course the positive impacts that service users are reporting. And again, new for this report, you'll note that 1,332 P6 to S6 pupils receive music tuition and also have a wide range of opportunities to hone their skills and bring to others. In terms of the challenges for CLLE, they remain broadly similar to previous quarters, albeit I can report some success in gaining some adult tutors ready for next session. These are in science, and our Hunt Floor Maths and English tutors continues. So in summary, given that this is the final quarter of the year, I'm pleased to report the positive performance of CLLE and education. I wish to thank staff for their ongoing commitment and the impact on those that we serve.
Bob,
That's a comprehensive report, Michelle. Can I draw your attention to page 116 of your report? The family doing this draft right and pick it up on your phone exclusions. You want to clarify the exclusions. Are they self-excluded or are they excluded by the authority? It seems to be rising.
Yes. So an exclusion from school is temporary. It is a last resort when all other aspects or all other approaches either aren't suitable or have been exhausted. It's a delegated responsibility, so it is the school that manages the exclusion. However, they need to inform the local authority of their intent or their recommendation to exclude. You will understand, obviously, in terms of the promise, we've got a commitment, in terms of looked after children that have not been excluded from school. The impact of an exclusion on a placement, etc., can be enormous. So although school is responsible for managing behaviour on a day-to-day basis, and therefore, will manage the exclusion, they don't just do it, without seeking guidance from the local authority. But yes, that's why we met recently with the secondary head teachers, because we are concerned that there has been quite a significant rise in the number of exclusions.
Chair, could I ask a supplementary? Are those exclusions, are the S4 students, S5 or S6 students?
More worryingly, it's younger pupils that are being excluded. It's our S1, S2 that are causing us probably the bigger concern at the moment.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Related topic, historically, if you take groups of workers for the council, we have high absence rates for the very stressful ones in social work and so on. And historically, teachers have some of the best attendance records.
Yes.
So it's concerning that this is drifting away. And I just wonder if there's any correlation with the sort of like instance of information bias and behaviour in schools, and our teachers being feeling under much greater stress than they've ever been before. Perceived or real, I don't know.
Yeah. So education have a new HR business partner, and when I spoke to the head teachers this morning in the church very nearby, one of the things that I said to head teachers was that I'll work with the HR business partner to really look into the detail of the staff absence. We do have an increase across primary and secondary, probably more pronounced in primary and special than secondary, but it's still a feature in secondary. But what we need to do is really examine the reason for people being off, the frequency of that, etc. But certainly I work very closely with the trade unions, and the trade unions are reporting staff anxiety, concerns about staff wellbeing, concerns about behaviour in schools and the impact of that. Hence, that's why the educational psychology team are setting up these reflective spaces to work with staff on their wellbeing, because we're keen to understand, you know, what the issue is and how we can work together to resolve that issue.
We might have better data going forward.
Absolutely, and I'm more than happy, you know, to bring something back to yourselves in terms of what we find out, because as you will appreciate it, it becomes this vicious circle. So if I take somewhere like Saltersgate, you know, probably our most, you know, complex needs children, you know, in the whole region, they require, you know, specialist staff, trained staff that know the strategies to work with that individual, you know, and you know, the safety plans, you know, that sit alongside it. When there's a staff member off and you know, another staff member comes in, you know, we are seeing, you know, a communication by that individual, because, as I say, it's an unfamiliar staff member that maybe doesn't have the same level of understanding or training or whatever else. So yeah, we need to address the staff absence, because it is having an impact, you know, in terms of continuity and provision and service, but also it's having an impact on those staff members who are in school having to cover for absent colleagues too.
Yeah. I'm just thinking staff absences, we're trying to get funds from those absences. And the first question I'll follow up is, what is the policy in terms of staff attending doctor's appointments and hospital appointments?
So
In terms of being paid. So my understanding, sorry, just to give some context, my understanding is, and I'm aware of some staff that have been asked to take, particularly I suppose it's a wider question, but it's being related to education because they don't have the facility to take annual leave, like say time and stuff like that. So I understand that some staff have been asked to take unpaid leave for doctor's appointments, hospital appointments.
I'm not aware of that, and I'm happy to look into individual circumstances. Obviously, if it's a routine dental appointment, we encourage staff to make routine, you know, 12 monthly dental appointments, you know, in their holidays if they can, but we recognise the fact that, you know, it's not always possible because of, you know, diaries, etc. In terms of hospital, you basically get your appointment and that's when you have to attend. There's no negotiation in terms of, you know, an appointment that comes through. So, you know, the expectation is that staff will attend, you know, a hospital appointment, etc. and there will be no loss of income in relation to that.
So that needs to up in that thing, so. That's what I understand that it's from, at some point in the last couple of years, one of our staff member was in education. Had to take unpaid leave to attend a breast screening appointment, which I think is, if true, is completely and wholly irresponsible. Given the pressure of knowing how to try and get those appointments, and in particular in local health for doctors' appointments, we know how difficult the first process to get an appointment, and we have to rearrange an appointment. So if that's something that we can address.
If you can let me know the detail out with this meeting, that will be helpful, and I will absolutely follow that
I
up.
need to get permission from that.
Of course, of course.
I think it just beggars a bigger question. We should make sure that we do have a policy that staff are paid if they have to go for breast screening, any kind of screening like that, so because obviously their life threatening conditions. And I don't want to do, and I don't know the issue, but I kind of take the day to go for. And I mean, that all should be making sure the policies be clear to head teachers and that the start thing should be going.
Just confirm that policy is there, I think covers that area if you might want to come to.
Yeah, just to confirm, in terms of local government worker T's and C's, then staff doing the time on, we're certainly expected to take either an annual leave or flexi if it's available. Appreciate the council current case, that's education, so I'm not certainly with the circumstances.
I suppose
I'll certainly follow up.
thanks. It's sort of point of making is that, and I would only speak from my own morals is that I'm getting the choice here. They have to, if it's a dilemma, they have to lose income because a doctor's appointment or hospital appointment, and my health always going to come first. And if I can't afford to lose that, the reality is most of them just take the upset. And that's how it is. Some parts of it happens.
Actually, and just picking up on that, I think Steve was absolutely right, and I think the critical term that you used there was responsible, but I used irresponsible, but the flip side is the responsibility that we have as employers, and I just wonder, I know large scale employers, certainly in my other job, you know, you get these mobile, like breast screening, for example, and they will come down, but you know, they could park in a high school and, you know, offer that service. You know, I mean, this is purely hypothetical. I'm not saying that it has to be done, but these things can happen. And just in terms of our responsibility and addressing some of those potential kind of anxieties, if we can get in touch with the NHS and maybe arrange that kind of thing, whereby the big lorry comes and parks in the car park and all the teachers can go and get a health check or something like that. I think that's I don't know what, if there probably is a cost associated with it, but I just think, you know, in terms of kind of our responsibility and kind of addressing some of those anxieties might be something worth looking at. And surely, you know, we've got NHS people associated with the council, so we should be able to do something like that. I think it's a slight adjunct to the subject at hand, but I think it's something that we could make.
But to your point, I don't know what the risk is mobile, so I couldn't answer it. But at the same point, if you put park at a Lashwick High School, teachers that are at following primary school still have to get time off to go.
Yes, but potentially less time, and if it's arranged as a thing.
I think the point Steve is making is that Kevin talks about local government terms and conditions, and I think teachers come under local government terms and conditions. They come under a different scheme. So it's just making sure that there's that alignment of the policies across the board.
And generally, people, those teachers work in education, there are many staff members who work in education.
As I say, I meet Fiona and I meet the trade unions every fortnight. You know, and a lot of that is individual casework in terms of where issues have arisen. You know, we resolve matters, but we also have a local negotiating committee that also looks at, you know, the more strategic work. So, you know, please be reassured that we do take staff wellbeing very seriously.
Any other questions from Michelle? Thank you very much for the comprehensive reports. I'm very skilled in delivering them. Thank you. We will now take item 5.4, Leslie, what's been for the children's services? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here to present the Children's Services Performance Report on Happy Beg. Firstly, in respect to community planning, The Community Planning Partnership Board and Working Group recently completed a self-evaluation of the Community Services National Community Planning Self-Assessment. 20 community planning partnerships engaged in the self-assessment, with Midlothian CPP scoring strongly in the top 3 areas. So community engagement and capacity building, second place, making an impact, second place, and shared leadership, third place. And following self-assessment, there's been 2 further areas of improvement that have been identified, which are sharing resources and data, and an improvement plan for approved at the CPP board last week. In respect to children's services, progress and achievements, Midlothian continues to progress towards the foundations of the Promise Scotland Plan 2430. And this report highlights much of the work that we're doing to keep the promise. But they will be honoured to present a local progress report to Council in June, which will give greater detail about the work that we're doing and the work that we still have to achieve. During Q4, referrals to children's services have seen a nominal increase in bills. The overall numbers have been fairly static and remain lower, and that has really been since we've done the work to ensure that referrals for early support are redirected to alternative support. It's, however, important to acknowledge that there's not less families that are needing support, or indeed any less complex concerns that were being referred. Instead, the trend aligns with our own efforts to keep the promise by providing support to families at a much earlier stage, and redirect referrals for families towards earlier intervention and support services such as Team Around the Child and our Family Wellbeing Service. The nature of cases that are coming to statutory services continue to reflect significant safeguarding risks, and the complexity underscores the increasing challenges faced across the service, with many referrals with multiple risk factors such as domestic abuse, physical abuse, neglect, and mental health in families. The need for intensive assessment and intervention remains high, placing continued pressure on resources, and that, of course, includes the workforce. Staffing has remained a challenge during this quarter. However, despite the pressures, the workforce remains committed to ensuring that children and families receive timely and appropriate responses, balancing statutory responsibilities with a strong focus on providing holistic support to families. Work with support with the provision of income maximisation, and over the past quarter, there's been an increase in the Families Rate Study project and consequent financial gains. Across Q4, income maximisation has generated a total of just over £123,500, and that is income for 56 families. And a total gain across 3 income maximisation projects across 21 and 25 is £564,750, and that related to 297 families. Scotland Family Learning Centre is key to early support, providing support to children, parents, and covers the Midlothian via early year placements, group work, outreach, and other supports. We're delighted that the cross-party group were able to hear about all the successes of the service for the last year when Diane Brown, the service manager, presented recently. And this includes the shared prosperity fund to support the introduction for supper clubs and to develop the centre's secret garden. The Family Wellbeing Service continues to work alongside families, schools, health, and third sector partners to support children and their families to improve low school attendance and other wellbeing concerns. Referral for school attendance is a prime concern, account for about 50% of the overall allocation to the Family Wellbeing Service, and this is on track with services year 2 aim. Going forward, the development of a data dashboard to interactive education data will enable better tracking and understanding of the impact of the Family Wellbeing Service on attendance and attainment. The sector for statutory work, the number of children's named on the Child Protection Register has also remained fairly consistent across the past year. The main reason for registering and placing on the register is the risk posed by parental mental health, and this has been a bit of a shift in trend from previous years where domestic abuse was the most common risk factor. Emotional abuse and domestic abuse remain very prevalent in registrations. Likewise, data that are looked at for population likewise, the data evidences that are looked after population remains fairly static. The ongoing use of family group decision making supports families to devise a plan, with families staying together with support from extended family. In Q4, 28 family referrals were made to family group decision making, which supports children to remain in their families. In the coming year, we're seeking to strengthen our data to explore the connection between poverty and those on the Child Protection Register or who are looked after. In Q4, we had the opportunity to celebrate both our foster carers and our kinship carers. We held events involving staff and our carers, and this gave us a specific opportunity to say thank you and to celebrate the ongoing commitment and hard work of our Midlothian carers. As a result of reviewing and realigning our budget, we have been able to make some changes to further increase support and to create an aged care service, which is in the early stages of development, and to invest further in foster carer recruitment and also increase support for our kinship carers and adopters. We hope all these efforts will continue to help us to keep the promise to ensure all our care experienced children are loved and well cared for. Over the past year, we've made significant progress with our support for children and young people with a disability and their transition into adulthood. A discrete disability team is now in place for children's services, and a new team leader recruited based on his expertise in this area. Our focus remains on improving practice and consistency, and this is to ensure that families receive a fair and equitable response to assessed needs. The team are currently supporting 226 children or young people with a package of care, and this can vary from residential respite to allow children with a high level of need to remain living within their family, or to support children to attend appropriate social activities and, of course, thrive within their community. In addition, with funding from BTB, we now have a transitions worker in place who is working to review and introduce our new policy and procedure to support well-planned transition and to track data to support this planning. Over the next 3 years, we have identified over 200 young people with a varying level of need and who will require post-school support due to additional needs. Finally, I want to note that 283 council staff have been trained in trauma-informed practice across 24-25. In addition to children's services and learning and development, we have agreed for 17 children's services staff who will be supported to complete university-level qualifications. And all of these courses support the right base and trauma-informed practice.
Questions for David?
Thank you, convener. Thank you for that, Leslie. I have a question on page 138 about the risks and the amount of delay in families waiting for CAMS. It's an area that works on an early stage, but looking to ensure families reduce waiting times, and those that do not have clinical input are supported via other means. Can you speak a little bit more about the other means and what while I absolutely understand that CAMS is the pathway for certain children, is what can we be doing to support our families while they're wait?
So our single point of contact means and contact study needs in progress, and that is to allow us to gatekeep and signpost children and families who have these specific needs for much earlier support. We're in the process of strengthening our team around the child process, and our family wellbeing strategy is in the final stages of completion, and that's with a view to really strengthening our multi-agency working to ensure that there's that shared response to children in need. We're very aware that, and I think it links to the question earlier, that there is a whole range of children and young people who do not have a diagnosed mental health issue, who may be sitting on a waiting list and who would benefit from that much earlier support. So we're really trying to strengthen the options that we have to put that through our team around child processing at that much earlier point of intervention.
Just on my previous question, I asked Michelle about exclusions. I take children's services engage with children who have been excluded from school and trying to get them back into the school like that. Exactly what happens.
Yeah, we have close working relationships with education. Obviously, we're very aware of our looked after population and we work very closely with education, but our family wellbeing service, one of their roles to support young children with attendance and attainment And whilst that's really important, you know, that support is always widened to other issues that are ongoing for children in education. The key is to try to identify that at an earlier stage, so the supports in place. I mentioned in my report about a veterinary care service that's in the early stages of development. The primary aim of that is to support children who are at risk of being accommodated, and often that links to, you know, issues in education and support that's needed around about education. So we're really hopeful that that will help to support some of these issues, and will allow an opportunity to work much more closely with our partners in education and further afield to support these vulnerable young people.
I see there's an increase in foster care. Is there any correlation between the foster care and exclusions from schools? Is there anything you found out there?
Do you mean children going to foster care?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think
It's difficult for them.
yeah, I mean, our children that are coming to foster care are our most vulnerable children. You know, often they're experiencing difficulties and challenges in education. But as a looked after child, you know, there is a team round about that young person that is regularly reviewed, and that team round child includes our colleagues in education, educational psychology, health, etc. We do have a targeted campaign about foster care and recruitment at the moment, which is now generating. We're now beginning to see that is generating much more interest in foster care. I've been stagnant for a period of time, so we're really hopeful that we'll be able to increase our foster carer population over the next 6 months. We've already got a number of foster carers coming through PrEP, so that expands our provision. But our educare service is hoping to obviously prevent that children being accommodated, and also to work with children that there might be a risk of placement breakdown, whether that be foster care or, importantly, our kinship care population as well.
Yeah, you raised the new issue and a sensitive one of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. My view is that if people come here on that basis, they need to be properly looked after. But I am conscious there's been a row going on for some time in which the Scottish government, unlike Ukrainian refugees, says that this is a UK government or an English problem, and we'll only do something for the Scottish provision if the UK government gives money. And we kind of stuck as a local authority with the responsibility without knowing where the money will come from if we were to take a positive thinking.
Sorry, I can't really answer that question, but I can certainly bring back to Beth and ask her to provide some information around the Scottish Government's current position. Certainly, we have a dedicated team who support our unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and young people. If they are below a certain age, they are accommodated, and then they're afforded the same rights as, you know, and the same support and protection as any other looked after child.
As we were discussing yesterday, we did have support for Ukrainians, but I'm not sure we have anything coming through the system yet.
We do get funding for each of our unaccompanied, so we get funding per any unaccompanied child, and that's targeted to that individual child. So we do get funding, but in terms of what is being suggested or promoted in the future, I don't have any clarity about that. Sorry.
That's fun as well. So Nick, can you show
It's administered through the Home Office, so it's a very clear route that we have. We do work with COSLA very closely around this kind of personnel, and there's quite a lot of quite clear guidance put in place for us. But the funding comes via, or the expectation of funding flows comes via the Home Office. The issue of, I suppose, which is a national issue, is that often with people that are coming, there's a degree of complexity that comes with that the funding probably would never address fully for us. So there's always going to be a slight disparity in what we probably end up needing to provide and what our expectation or what the expectation from the Home Office would be. But it's a very clear route that we have.
So the distinction is that Ukrainian funding came through the Scottish government, whereas this is coming direct from the Home Office. Well, and there is some money coming.
Yes, so there was a Ukrainian scheme that factored in the UK government as well. It was quite complex, and because it was done at pace, it was quite a complex.
I think it's right, Nick. Scotland know for taking additional Ukrainian children because of the war. And the UK government at that stage said, look, if you take an additional, you've got to make the bill. I think that's the difference in here, is that there was additionality taken in Scotland. David?
Thanks, Chair. Quick question. We've talked about foster carers a little bit. and a really positive kind of high figure for approved in the last quarter. But over the last 2 years, my understanding of the indicators suggest that more foster carers have been deregistered than have been approved in the last 2 years. So do you think that really positive high figure the last quarter, is that the result of the campaign, the increase in remuneration for it? And do you think that's something that we might sustain, that kind of level of additional, because we've obviously got a deficit to make up?
Our foster care provision is no different than the national picture. It is a national trend that all local authorities have been faced with as a challenge. We do have an ageing foster care population, so our foster carers that have been deregistered are ones that come to the end of their foster care career. So our recruitment there's been a real focus on targeting a younger age group and making that more available to them. So, foster carers continue to be able to work on foster, whereas before that wasn't, seen as being helpful. We are trying to support a much more flexible fostering approach. So using our foster carers in much different ways, thinking about what skills across our foster care and redirecting that. It might be to go in and support a child in school, for example. So I think on the whole, we're trying, and I think we're being successful at an earlier stage to make foster care more attractive for, for much younger age group carers that are coming through, which I think is really positive. We'll continue. We have a kind of drip feed foster care recruitment campaign, which is taking place on a quarterly basis. So early signs are that is proven, positive, and we are beginning to see carers coming through, and not just coming through making initial inquiries, but actually being progressed on to next stages, so going through preparation, and then we've got a number of carers that are coming through for registration over the next 6 months. So at the moment, it is a really positive picture, and we'll continue to support that moving forward.
Good job, well done, thank you.
Feeling that I go back many years ago, if you wanted to become a foster family, effectively you had to be like the nuclear family, 2.2 children, and be married and have a sustained relationship. Has that changed? As you see now that the family unit isn't what it was 30 years ago? There's all the single parents and stuff like that. Has that sort of changed to be able to allow people sort of with the nuclear family to get into foster care?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a wide range of carers, with single carers, same-sex carers. And we promote all types of care now, and we see that as something really important and really positive for our children who are requiring alternative care. And as this flexible fostering approach, we're hoping to make it even more attractive, to people who may not be in a position to provide like that kind of 24-hour, 7-day-a-week fostering role, but in a fostering capacity can kind of provide outreach or more short-term type support for children. So yeah, I think we need to be as flexible as we can be to meet the kind of ever-changing needs of our children, young people and their families in Midlothian.
Thanks. Just on the staff training, I think you mentioned there were 17 staff who was looking for university education. And other authorities doing that as well. And it's just thinking about how we maximise that investment in those staff. So whether they're headhunted or might be tempted to go elsewhere once they achieve that standard.
I can't vote for other local authorities. I don't know the answer to that, but I think certainly Midlothian Children's Services have always been keen to kind of grow our own and support our own talent, if you want, for a better word. So and what we find in Midlothian is that workers who, students either come on placement or who we put through the training stay in Midlothian, which is really, really positive. So we have a number of workers who are progressing towards their social work qualification, as well as social workers who are doing kind of postgraduate qualifications in child protection, or in leadership and management. So, and it's something that we want to continue. We see it's really valuable and important to support us growing and developing our own workforce.
I think it's great just to need to be reclaiming that into staff once
Yeah, we're doing a lot of work now for staff wellbeing at the moment as well. We in Beg alongside service managers completed a staff survey just at the turn of the year, and that's now leading into our service improvement, part of which is around about staff wellbeing and development. So we're introducing staff development sessions, staff briefings, reflective practice, reflective space, etc. So there's a real focus moving forward, and one of our priorities is going to continue to be staff wellbeing.
That's really good to hear, because mine, let's go back to 2000, sorry, I just keep harking back to what it used to be. But I can remember when they developed, I think they called it the golden handcuff. And the Edinburgh Council initially done that, if you stay with us for 3 years, we'll give you £3,000 at the end, yeah. And then the joining authorities just came in with slightly better offer. And it just kept going like that until it just became ridiculous. But that was that. Okay, any other questions or comments? Leslie, thank you very, very much. You want item 5.5, which is adult social care, and that will be next.
Much. Although this is quarter four, I will spend a bit of time just looking back for the full year with some achievements, outcomes, and some challenges as well. Starting maybe unusually focusing initially on welfare rights, and just to highlight that we generated nearly £4.5 million in the financial year for people in Midlothian, which is an increase in the previous year. Important point in relation to our welfare rights team, which is that it works predominantly within a social work sphere. So a lot of work done at number 11, a lot of work done across our other teams. And by implication, I would suggest that that's some of our most vulnerable populations. So a real positivity around achieving that amount of income generated for people that need it the most. Within learning disabilities, we've done a lot of work with providers regarding their ear inspectorate grades. We've got a quality assurance officer that's dedicated to working specifically with providers and ensuring that the grades are as high as they can be. This is particularly important within the financial context that we work within the Health and Social Care Partnership and the challenges that providers have, but also in terms of our revised look at how we commission our services. Clearly, if we take with the learning disabilities alone, around about 80–85% of our service delivery is commissioned from providers, so it's important that they are of the highest quality as we can get them. Physical disabilities, we've done a lot of work on throughput in the last year, so responding to people more quickly, focusing a little bit more on self-management, which is particularly important in relation to aids and adaptations. It means that wait times in theory should reduce, but also that people are able to refer themselves more readily. And we've done a lot of work around the platforms that allow them to do that, including moving to more digital offers as well, although we do have some way to go still with that. We have seen an increase in the last year in people with physical disabilities receiving our care at home services. That presents probably two challenges for us. One is that they tend to be more complex just by the nature of the physical disabilities that they have. But also within that, we've seen the number of over 65s who have physical disabilities increasing as well. And that brings other challenges in relation to frailty and dementia as well, and that double challenge that can present. That said, there is some positivity around that, which would suggest, number one, that people continue to live longer with more challenging conditions, but also that people are less likely to enter specialist care and are more likely to remain in our own homes for longer. But it does have significant financial implications for us. Within care at home, we've seen in the last year a reduction in the number of hours and therefore people waiting in the community. We still probably have the balance of that slightly skewed towards hospital discharge, although that's an important area. I would like to see a further reduction in the coming year in relation to the number of people and hours that are waiting within the community. It can be quite a hard balancing act to get those two things right with the number of hours we have available, but we are working hard to do that. We continue within care at home to upskill our staff, and Leslie talked about our training offer. We have significant training offers within care at home. People can join our service and then get upskilled as they journey through the grades and the work that they do. It's good in terms of bringing new people into social care. It can be challenging in relation to the balance that we need in terms of having skilled staff joining us as well. I'll maybe just spend a few moments focusing on new buyers as it was one of the actions. I've spoken about the inspection that we had in the last year before. We have made some positive progress, I would contend, with the new buyers, but it remains challenging. Staffing remains challenging. Leadership at times remains challenging. Some of that is related to location. Some of it is related to historical challenges. We have seen some improvements in relation to the care and the care plans that are being delivered, but the care inspectorate still has some concerns around the sustainability of staffing and other aspects. Just in relation to that and the action specifically, I know this was raised the last time, we are continuing to look at our nursing offer there. We have provision for 3 nurses within new buyers. The greatest issue we have is recruitment and retention. Nursing, a little bit like some other professions, have the choice of where they can go. Working within a local authority care home, which is slightly out with or towards the tail end of our boundary, is proving challenging in terms of recruitment and retention. So just by way of example, today, we do have 3 nurses, but 2 of them are leaving and going to jobs within a hospital acute setting, which is what they would prefer to do. We need to look at how we manage this better with the financial envelope we have. We have done a workforce skills mix piece of work in relation to our own care staff. We are looking at whether we move to more of a model which includes district nursing, reaching into new buyers and using the resource in that way. It's probably not working for us, the route we have just now where we employ the nurses directly. So we need to have a conversation about how we best do that. It remains a challenge. We still have 40 beds open in new buyers in a 61 bedded footprint. The 40 beds we have are at 95% occupancy through the year, so mostly full. We are much more judicious now around who we take into new buyers. Previously, it was a challenge. We were the provider of last resort, which impacted therefore on our ability to manage. Then followed through in terms of food inspections, staff recruitment, retention, morale, all the other things. I've been very, very clear that what we need to do is using, I suppose, a bit of parlance. It needs to be horses for courses. We need to be able to take people that we can manage well. Private care homes charge far more and therefore should be taking some of our more complex people when we can't do that. I'm still in the position where I am reluctant to open the 13 additional beds that we have until we have a degree of sustainability around our care home beds. I would like to see us move to goods for both our leadership and our staffing on a consistent basis before we do that. I appreciate that leaves the Health and Social Care Partnership in a slight position in terms of 13 beds that are out of the system. And we are short of care home beds generally within Midlothian. But I think safety has to be paramount. And I know my predecessor and I talked about this a huge amount when she was Chief Social Work Officer. And through our social work assurance group, we continue to monitor this. But the position would be today that we would still want to see an improvement, sustained improvement in care home grades. Moving on, just in terms of justice, which continually I think is a relatively good news story. We do have challenges there, as many members know, in relation to how we manage some of our highest risk offenders. But we've continued in the last year to develop our performance framework. We're developing our service user feedback framework. Not an easy thing to do within justice, as you can imagine, bearing in mind the majority of people are not coming to us willingly. We've spoken before about the type of work that we do within our unpaid work, and we are continuing to broaden that out and offer more choice to people when they come. The days, I suppose, of people just working, clearing the roads and other things are gone. There are a range of different options that people can now do. And they do reach into some of the care homes, for example, and repaint and do some other really good stuff. The service user experience within justice is important, obviously, to us, but it's also important as it can help signpost to a need for a deeper dive into people's needs, which ultimately would seek to reduce reoffending. Usually that involves drugs, alcohol, and mental health. Our public health colleagues continue to work on 2 areas. One is around our health improvement team working out of number 11 and reaching into temporary accommodation, again, with very vulnerable people. And we're also doing an increasing amount of work around suicide prevention as well, which is not just a public health issue. We are moving that over into public protection space as well. I've spoken throughout the year at great length around mental health. I have to say I've probably not seen as much scrutiny in mental health as I have in the last 6 to 8 weeks from my colleagues in NHS Lothian, particularly in relation to the bed base at the Royal Edinburgh Hospital. We continue within Midlothian to perform extremely well, and have been held up as a very good example of that flow from acute through to community. And we are being asked for some of the work that we've done around that to be shared with our colleagues, particularly in Edinburgh, who have some quite significant challenges. I set out in the paper the work we've done with people with dementia. We do have ongoing work to do there around post-diagnostic support, which is the support people are entitled to receive 12 months after their diagnosis. Our wait times for that are improving, but they could be slightly better. But again, they stand up well with the rest of the country. I've said on many, many occasions, our substance use treatment standard around how people access treatment for drugs and alcohol is amongst the best in the country. That is not to minimise the need sometimes to be even more responsive, particularly out of hours, and I know that's an issue that's been raised before. We continue to look at how we best do that. When we have piloted that, particularly for alcohol, it hasn't been particularly well utilised, so we need to explore why that might be a little bit more. Excuse me, we are looking at developing more group interventions during the day for substance use as well. Just a couple of things to finally finish up around developments and challenges. Like Leslie spoke about, we continue to offer a range of both wellbeing offers to staff, but also training, both professional, paraprofessional and post-qualifying training. Just maybe to go back to the question that was posited to Leslie, I would say Midlothian is amongst the best local authorities, certainly on this side of the country, in terms of offering staff opportunities to train either as social workers or as post-qualifying opportunities, whether that be child protection, mental health or adult protection. Sickness absence work has been ongoing throughout the year, and again, I've spoken before about this, but in high bank, care at home and new buyers, it tends to be stubbornly high at times. We continue to work with that, both a mixture of wellbeing, but also ensuring the policies are enforced. And we're currently retraining all managers in relation to sickness absence policies within the council. And lastly, we are, as part of our transformation work, looking at our bed base within Midlothian. So that's not just about care homes, it's also about the new Poland Street development as well. And I'm keen that we include a mental health element to that within Poland Street, within extra care housing if we can, because that's a major shortage for us in terms of rehabilitation accommodation for people with mental health problems. And lastly, as it was the end of your report, I would just want to thank all the staff within the Health and Social Care Partnership for the hard work. It's not to minimise the challenges, but there has been a huge amount that's been done this year, and hopefully we'll still see it stay on the board.
Thanks, Mike. Russell? Yeah, thanks very much for that. And can I just ask a question on new buyers? In terms of the 13 beds and what you said about the demand out there, would it be worthwhile, if we're not going to do it in the short term, reopen it under the Midlothian Council? So would it be worthwhile seeing if we could get a private partner to come in and operate that block on the basis of at least getting these beds made available to the needy? I mean, I just asked that on the basis of not going too on at the moment, but looking for something to happen in the interim, and even if it was done on the basis of a monthly contract or something. I'm just wondering if there's any way that we could get these 13 places open again, so that we could actually do people in.
See, just before you answer that, Nick, just so that I like to remember that the reason we closed doing that one, and the reason we closed doing that one, was that partly as a direct result of quite a bad criticism we had for the inspector, that we were having to rely on agency staff, and there was too many agency staff compared to full time. And it just remember why it was shut down and what the safety issues were.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We had really perilous staffing, I would say, in relation to temporary staffing, and it just wasn't safe in John and I's view at the time and we were actually a lower number of people that were there as a result, because reputationally it was big enough to damage us as well. So families didn't want, they would rather at one point that the relative remained in hospital than come to new buyers. So reputationally it's been a huge challenge for us. In terms of the question, so yeah, we have had some discussions with the care inspectorate about what we could perhaps do from a registration point of view with that additional street. And we've begun to, I suppose, the part of the bed-based review that I talked about right at the end there, I think we need to have a clear strategy around what ultimately we want to do with that. I think I'm very open to looking at whether additional private provision might help us there. The slight problem I've got with that, the challenge I always have, is that one of the real benefits of having a local authority care home is that it takes national care home rate and it doesn't charge above that. And that means that our poorest people will always have access to care home beds. So ideally, what I think we'd want to do is keep those 13 beds within a national care home rate framework. If we've got private provision, and it's more challenging to do that. But there also are some inspection issues as well, and registration issues around having effectively two providers providing out of one building. There is a further issue we are looking at is, could we repurpose that street to either have more respite? Could we turn it into some sort of rehab? So I spoke about mental health rehab being short. The slight issue with some of that is if we repurpose it, we probably need a distinct entry and exit point, which would require funding around enabling works. The other issue we've looked at is whether a daycare option there could be provided. But again, we were told by the care inspector it would have to be a separate exit and entry. So there are some challenges. I know Mary Curie are looking for some additional space around hospice provision. So we have had some early conversations, not myself, but MORAG, but it doesn't look again as if that would be a flyer, because that is essentially medical provision and there are certain things that they need. So just to reassure, we're looking at a number of different options. I do accept we can't leave it vacant long term. So we need to do something with it. It's just the safety issue. And going back to Derek's point, I'm still not assured that the staffing is in a good enough place internally for us to do something at the moment.
Just before, David, is yours on the same point as Huffle's?
Yeah, I mean, it's all around new buyers.
Okay, just come back to you on it. And Molly, and then David.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nick. I'm fortunate being on this committee that I have an insight into the situation in new buyers. But for the benefit of the public and transparency, I think the report that you've suggested on new buyers, page 163, the maximum occupancy rate of new buyers was achieved at 95 and the overall was at 96 occupancy. I think that's a bit misleading, if you don't mind me saying that, because of the closure to that street. So I think we should maybe qualify that. You're taking new buyers as a whole in the context of the 60 bed. That percentage of occupancy should be drastically reported as a reduction, I feel, in new buyers. And further to what you said about the beds, we visited Pennycook Health Centre last week, and indeed there was an explanation from the GP, Drummond that a resident in Midlothian wanted to die at home, and they had to move her somewhere, and they tried to get hospice support, and they couldn't get anything. There was just nothing anywhere in Midlothian, anywhere Marie Curie, anywhere. There was no hospice, so they had to unfortunately admit her to the Royal Infirmary, which is a great shame. She didn't want that type of closure on her death. So I just when I read the occupancy stats, I knew what you meant, but it won't resonate with the public. But that's an actual fact that 96% occupancy rate is being achieved. I just want to how you would explain that in the report.
Well, I would know that. I suppose the service priorities are revised every year. So I suppose we've got into the mindset that it's currently 48 beds and has now been for a number. I mean, I'm thinking back probably coming on for nearly 2 years actually when it's been at that. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a performance reporting issue, so I'm happy to take that back.
Thanks.
Thanks, Derek. In fairness to, I agree with Willie. I kind of looked at that and it took me a little while to pass that it was 96% of 75% essentially. So I think it's worth clarifying that. So my question is, and I will kind of preface this by, holding my hands up and saying, I'm not that close on kind of the health side of stuff. But I just wonder, and I think I've asked this question before, possibly at BTSB that I attended, about kind of, you said you're looking at a number of options, and I'm just wondering if there's not a nuclear option as such, but kind of options that aren't restricted by concerns around finance, because what it sounds like, a lot of the issues seem to be geographical. And I just wonder whether, and then your other options about sharing the space, I wonder whether we hand that space over to a private provider and build something else that takes into account your council-run care home beds, your mental health accommodation, And there was something about homelessness as well, and kind of respite. I think I've talked about this as a care village, I think, before, and I know the Borders did a couple. And I just wonder whether that's something that you're looking at seriously as a way to kind of not wash our hands of new buyers per se, but kind of and go, actually, let that be a private provider, let them kind of deal with that. That gets the 60 beds potentially operational, but that allows us then to focus on providing all the stuff that we say are shortcomings in our own provision somewhere else, potentially more geographically amenable to people. It may just be, yes, we are. That may be the answer. But I think for me, it feels like without a lot of understanding, kind of put that out there, that might be a way forward. That'd be useful for members to have an understanding of the cost associated with that, so that it could potentially form part of discussions that we have.
So I'd anticipate part of the work that we're doing will factor in all the options. That would be my anticipation. So there's a report that will go to the IGB later on this year, which will set out essentially a full bed-based review of what we need in Midlothian Community Hospital, right through to our care home beds, extra care housing and so on. And I would anticipate that would consider including what we do with new buyers.
Yeah.
I suppose what I think you're probably is at least in part, if not more than part, going to be achieved, we hope, through the Bolton Street development, which is a range of different options across 3 buildings. So I think that will be a good test for us. And I've said before, I think the future in many ways lies less in care homes. And I think we need to move to a mentality where care homes become almost palliative care for people the last year of their lives. And people who go into care in Midlothian live far longer in care homes than most other areas. Now, you could argue that's a good thing, or it could be the other way where we go. And some of the issue we have is we don't have enough of the extra kind of housing option that we need that Bolton Street will not bring on stream. I suppose where I come from is I'd rather see more extra care housing than care homes.
Will you rate 3 high treatment in the
The data I remember from your previous consideration is the average cost is 55,000 a year, and the average time is 20 months. So I'm sure that 55 has gone up. So this is an expensive and important commitment, especially for those who have no other place to go to. So I'm actually on board that. We've kind of gone 180 degrees because, again, your previous, one of the solutions here is to directly employ the nurses, because that way we'll have continuity of service. We'll also have very high costs of using bank nurses. Now, what seems too good to be true here is if we revert, we will actually get the district nursing service, but who is to pay for the additional commitment? Is it the IJB or we going to pay for it? How's that going to work?
Yeah. So the funding for the nurses sits with ourselves, the 3 nurses, so sits within the new buyer's budget. So if we were to move away from that model, there'd be an initial transfer, I would anticipate, around that. But what we also need to do, which I'm not quite as involved in, so it doesn't sit with me, is there needs to be a wider community nursing review. So we have a range of different community nursing teams. And I suppose the chief nurse, I know, takes a view that we are, broadly speaking, across communities short of nursing. So we need to do a full review. And I think that would probably be NHS Lothian corporate nursing view as well. My view would be beyond the 3 nurses that we fund in new buyers. I wouldn't necessarily see us providing any more additional funding. I would see that as an NHS responsibility to provide healthcare within our sector.
If we go to the IJB and say, awfully nice chaps, if you provide the nursing support for new buyers.
Well, I suppose the community nursing review should tease out what our workforce needs are. I think we like going into too much detail, Peter. There's a small number of teams within nursing who, when we've looked at their demand and their capacity, they have more capacity than demand. So I think there's a repointing there of nursing provision across a small number of the teams that could go into district nursing that could then reach into both new buyers and also high bank as well, because we need to factor in new high bank into that as well. Because when people are going into care homes, they're going in with greater acuity than ever before. So the frailty that present does require nursing input. And I suppose the question would be, even with what we've done in new buyers, with the numbers and with changing in the types of people we bring in, there are still challenges around that nursing provision. So we sometimes have to draw at the moment upon district nursing and other teams. But I think there's a wider look at community nursing and looking at the teams that maybe are slightly less busy, because district nursing is very busy, but there are other teams that are less busy. I think there needs to be a full community review. And just this morning, I got an email from the chief officer to the chief nurse, and myself was copied in, which is asking that we start doing that. Because I think with my colleague Reece Cowan being off, I think it's highlighted that there are a number of areas that probably we need to pick up around community nursing if we haven't yet.
Quite interesting answer that. I've not thought because 4 years time, I think it was Mary Smith that was head of children's services at the time. And I was just trying to remember who her adult services, it was Alison, I think it was. And the report that came elected members was on the back of a very bad inspection report yet again, and it asked for 6 nurses.
Yep.
And additional money straight from the council, not for the NHS, it was the council who initially put the money in, and it was for 6 nurses. And that additionality, with other additionalities went in, I think £500,000 in total, if I'm right, and this was for additionality, that's what we were told was needed. Because a lot of the bad inspection report was about the lack of registered medications and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting how it changes. There've never been 3 nurses now, and now who's responsible for paying for them? So it's quite an interesting one that I must go back and try to read that report out as to why we put that in. But I think they're certainly going back about 12 years ago. And it's the same.
Maybe the 3 theory, that's what the council could pay for. The NHS said no.
The money went in, the money went in for the council because the IGB didn't exist at that time.
Well, that's, I mean, even if you go back to the IGB and say it, the IGB will just come back and say, well, we need more money from the council. Right?
The IGB didn't know how much money. Didn't spoil anybody.
Yes, so I did have a look at that, so I know it came up last time, and I again, the report, I couldn't locate anything, and I spoke to a number of people, Derek, and I certainly my time here, which has coming up for 4 years, we've only ever had a maximum of 3, and to be honest,
I'm one of the nurses that was employed at the time. I'll ask them what date it was they started there, and I'll give you the date, but I think it was maybe 2016.
I mean, I don't know if some money was passed over to what we had at the time. It's slightly less now, but we had what's called a care home support team, which supports all care homes in Midlothian, including our own care homes. That's part of the community nursing offer I was just saying to Peter about. I don't know whether there's, I don't know enough about funding. I don't.
Certainly came in before IGB was put on the horizon, and the person I'm talking about, I know very well she applied for one of the jobs. Okay.
Chairman, could I open the window, please?
Nick, thanks for this one item for clarification. What's the current bed occupancy at Royal Ledborough just now?
Today, so I get the daily bed states now because it's such high acuity we've got. So there are 105 beds in the Royal Edinburgh. There are 120 people in 105 beds today. We have 7 people. We have 7 people in 8 beds. So we are the only area that underuses our beds.
Rather than using.
Yeah. So just to give a clear example, because I'm on this all day, every day it feels at the moment. We have a 16-bedded ward that we share with East Lothian, 8 beds each. Yesterday there were 20 people in 16 beds, so there were 4 people in side rooms. We had 5 people in yesterday of our 8. 6 of our 8 yesterday. There were 9 people in our ward from Edinburgh, and there was 1 person from West Lothian. So the problem broadly is a mix of 2 things within the Royal Edinburgh. It's that Edinburgh have a smaller number of beds than they probably need. And the second issue is an issue around the Royal Edinburgh themselves having difficulty discharging people and the risk thresholds, which is an operational clarification. And there's a meeting going on just now that I would ordinarily be at through an Kennedy Sat for it today, which is talking about all of it.
So sorry, Chief. So does that mean that our beds may be under threat unless we have a contract with them?
No. We commission we commission however many beds we think we will need. We are looking at what we might need going forward. But 8 at the moment, and broadly speaking, we broadly through the year, we broadly don't overuse those 8 beds. We also have 6 rehabilitation beds. They are always full. So my bigger issue isn't the flow in and out, because the number 11 do a great job. It's the rehab people that go in that need longer term accommodation, what we call grade 5 accommodation, so high level support, and we don't have enough of that in Midlothian, which is why I'm looking at seeing whether the Colton Street development can help us with.
Thanks, thank you.
Just on that, what's, do you know what the average stay is in both elements? Like, one of them will do.
I can get that for you, I don't have it.
Just interesting, just.
We do have one person at least who admittedly is a slight outlier in one of our rehab beds who has been there for about 8 years. So I mean, we're talking for the rehab substantial. Our flow through the queue is far less in terms of our median days, but I can certainly get that for next time for the last years.
Thanks, Darren. Sorry, Nick, every time you say something, I've got more questions. I apologise for that. So just on that, we commissioned 8 beds and we've got 6 Midlothian people in there. And Edinburgh have got 9 in the Midlothian, East Lothian. What happens if someone from Midlothian needs one of those other 2 that we commission? And do Edinburgh like reimburse us for the 2 beds of ours that they're using? Or is it just, sorry?
So that's the second question. No, that's not how it works. I have asked that question before. The answer to the first question, what happens is people wait for a bed. At the moment, they sit in the pathways of the emergency department, they're all infirmary. We had somebody detained over the weekend. We needed a hospital bed who was detained on the Mental Health Act, who waited 30 hours. We finally got a next much. That's the challenge we've got. And it's risky and it's not safe, and that's why I'm having meetings 3 times a week about it. The problem, such as there is a problem, is not one that we broadly contribute to because we manage our flow very well, but it is a system-wide issue that people wait until a bed becomes available. And then what people like me get every single day, sometimes is there anybody in the body that can go, anybody that can go there? And then you get into thresholds of risk around how our community teams can take people out and manage them. What we want to avoid is people go straight back in again or worse.
Yeah.
So it's a real challenge. The issue is that Lothian as a whole has a proportion of mental health beds which is amongst the lowest in the country, and Edinburgh particularly don't have enough beds. When it was commissioned, they didn't build enough beds. There was an overall.
But it's fundamentally you managing our flow in and out better doesn't actually benefit us, really. It's benefiting
benefits the system.
And we get no financial benefit from that contribution.
The only benefit we would get is if we decommissioned one of the beds. So if we're using an average 7 beds, which is what we average using through the year. If I said, well, we'll just take 7 beds, I would get the money out for the last bed, but that's about 85,000 per annum. Against the mental health bed, it's more than that can be.
From a man, I can say it's fair to say so that we benefit in other areas, health where we're maybe using substantially more than what we're actually paying for. And I think it's more a collaboration with Edinburgh kind of being an outlier where Edinburgh seems to have underfunded everything. With the other 3 local authorities.
Pick up the tab.
There's a quick portfolio, we're benefit in other areas. So it's just, it's not just one losing.
Yeah.
There are other areas in the Edinburgh that are acting together would probably be the perfect system rather than chucking invoices and paying more folk to bill each other. You're actually just collaboratively working. Is there any other questions? Okay, that just, it's probably worth also pointing out some of the good news stories in here, because we're really good at getting into that. Where we've got concerns about welfare rights bringing in 4.4 million. See what would be really good for elected members, because I think I'm right in saying welfare rights is the only non-statutory service that you've got run now.
It's not delegated as well, Derek. So yeah.
So welfare rights, what would be really good to understand for councillors is, because there's a reasonable investment going out in that, but would it be possible to break down what that 4.4 million pound is? And we like to council tax and council rents and stuff like that. You know, how much comes back to the council for its investment in welfare rights? And does it outweigh? Because I think it will substantially outweigh what it puts in. It would be helpful if it's possible to break that 4.4 down as to what that was. I mean, we're all about the care home, but the grades have went significantly up over the last 2 or 3 years. So again, that's to be congratulated. And if you look at stuff like substance misuse, people seen on time, I think that's 1/4 were at 98% and another 3/4 were at 100% of people seen within the 21 days. So there are a lot of good news stories in there. Unfortunately, just your last, but the Conservative will go to certain areas, so it's worth just thanking the staff for all their hard work in the partnership, because the board are really challenging environment. Okay, thanks Nick.
Thank you.
Okay, now move on to 5.6, inspection of Cherry Resource Centre, which is yet another really good news story for you, Nick.
Yeah, thank you. I've got three reports and I'll be as brief as I can be.
You just want to take us through them one after another?
I do, yeah. Cherry Road Learning Disability Service in Bonnie, familiar to many of you. This was an unannounced inspection on the 4th of March this year. It resulted in 4 very good, so grade 5s and 1 good, the good being for the environment. That's an increase in every grade from the previous inspection, which I would contend was an inspection as well. I suppose it's noting amongst that it wasn't an unannounced inspection, so there's some degree of pressure around that. The acuity has changed in Cherry Road over recent years. There's a lot more challenges. Again, a lot of younger people coming in transitions. And it is, for anybody that's been, it is a great resource. It's a great environment. And I think we're rightly proud of it. Again, it provides a service that, again, sits within a local authority sphere, which many other areas now don't have. And just finally, I would want to offer my thanks to Liz Davidson, the manager, who has worked in Cherry Road. Many of you will have met Liz over the years, for many years. And is absolutely committed to the service. And I'm really pleased for her and all her staff for the quality of the inspection. So maybe on to Highbank. This was another unannounced inspection on the 29th of January of this year. There were 2 areas focused on, and there were 2 grades, a 4 and a 5, so a good and a very good. There was one area for improvement, which is the medication audit system. Just needed to be more robust, and that's currently being worked on. And maybe just finishing up on that, of course, Highbank are preparing this year, we hope, for a move to the new Highbank in Fulton Street, so there's a degree of excitement around that. And finally, the Extra Housing Development Crown Court in Pennington. This was another unannounced inspection at the end of 2024, November 24. 32 flats within Crown Court. This was a pilot inspection that was based on the National Health and Social Care Standards, so slightly different from the others. There were no areas for improvement, and there was a general view that it was a very good resource. And the experience certainly doing that inspection in a slightly different way was from the staff as well. So 3, broadly speaking, very good outcomes from inspections. 2 in older people and 1 in disabilities.
The questions are in the 3 reports. Peter?
Indeed, congratulations. I think this is very positive in terms of the level here we provide. By the by, where are we in terms of disposal of old Highbank and repurposing of old Highbank? What's going to happen?
So I'm not 100% sure, actually. I think there's a conversation that we're having. I don't know if Kevin might be able to help me out.
Yeah, the assumption is we achieved a handful of seats for that site. And when it's moved, I know there's some site going to have some chance there. The intention for us, as the council, is to gain a council receipt. That was the market.
Okay, so we can't repurpose it for any other function of the council.
It's no longer fit for use, which is the whole point of provisioning. Highbank, I know we've repurposed, as you know, Edmund House and Cove and others. But we say demands to look at Highbank. And I think we might have some local resistance taking particular localities.
Yes, I was just going to thank you for the reports, good reports. I know Cowan Court report was done in November, but since then, I believe, the lunch provision has been removed from Cowan Court. Can you just explain why that was?
Yes, so my understanding was it was used by virtually nobody. I know we've had some complaints and I haven't dealt with them myself, really. They were sitting with somebody else, but my understanding was there were a very small number of people that were using the updates, so it wasn't cost effective for us to be running it. I'm not minimising the complaints that have been made, but the complaints seem disproportionate to the usage, if that makes sense. So I appreciate when any type of provision is removed, it creates a degree of upset. But that was the rationale. Was it was I think the number. Well, I can't remember exactly the number, but it's a very low number that brings.
2 that came to my subject.
Yeah, I was hesitating to say that. Might have been the only 2. I think it was more than that. But there were many more than that. There were easily. Okay, you're really.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks.
Then do you have any other questions on 5.6, 5.7 or 5.8? Okay, can you note the recommendations that you actually all the stuff? All there. Okay, right, thank you. 5.9 and corporate solutions, Kevin Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. This performance report for Corporate Solutions provides the outcome measures in the range of work carried out and completed in the final quarter of 2024-25, and also reflects on the extensive efforts and support services delivered to Midlands communities. The key achievements are depicted in the current graphics of this report. There's an increase in demand in our libraries, a reduction in complaints, and an uptake in the delivery of our person-centred services through the year. A range of services are delivered through our libraries, and developed into one-stop shop destinations recently, such as our lending men hubs, also the Warren Well hubs, which are hosted in those at Danner Hall, Glasgow, Roadhead, and Newbattle, who are the years. Our library services are regional and country winners this year for Scotland in the Bookseller Library of the Year Award, but they just missed out last month in the wide for final. The investment in our workforce and the implementation of the workforce strategy of the Council is detailed, with an increase in health and wellbeing events, a reduction in our long-term absence, and a comparable reduction in employee relations cases, as well as a continuing reduction in staff turnover and in our gender gap. There's also a wholesale people policies review being undertaken and to being progressed through our HR services together with our experience. Our digital transformation strategy for 24 through to 29 was approved at Council in December, and this is key to delivering change as part of the Council's transformation blueprint and fully utilising digital tools, digitising and automating our processes, and introducing AI and ensuring that decisions can be made through comprehensive data and management information. And Microsoft 365 has become the Council's central communication and collaboration tool this past year, for more efficient and effective work practice in conjunction with our channel shift for customer contact, consultations and promotions, which you get details from the report. Members will be aware of recent attacks on our very near neighbouring authorities over recent weeks, and cybersecurity is a continuing threat. The digital team depend daily to safeguard us from being digital dead. With over 500,000 phishing and spam emails this past financial year, and 80 malicious attacks have been thwarted. Major business application upgrades also been carried out, and those were successfully completed. Whilst these business as usual activities are not necessarily visible or have a big profile, they are critical to our customer services, our revenues, housing, school, social work, HR functions, as well as making payments to our local suppliers and in providing corresponding supports to households in the area. In procurement, there were 35 new tenders awarded on our public contract Scotland this year, with 288 new suppliers registered, of which 61 are Newman based. Also carried out 78 regular procurement exercises, and Chair, further details provided in the year-end report. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Questions, comments? David, and then David.
Right.
Questions, Kevin. Reduction in green slip transactions. What's a green slip?
That's a manual process for our payments, and the colleagues in the team will be appointed by those. Until we get things online, it's a manual process. It has to be validated or approved by senior officers. So you're shipping week.
And cost of living prices stamps. 7,160 application for prices stamp, 1351. You get that. And the possible future reports are maybe I'll get you find a breakdown of how many of those grants are approved and how many of them rejected.
I think it may be in there, but I'll double check and there's not, I'll come back to that line.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just want to kind of on record, congratulations on, this report, but a huge wealth of work that often kind of flies under the radar a bit, that kind of makes all the stuff in the background work. Some really, really positive figures in there. Just a very quick question that's come out of a couple of meetings that we've had, and it relates to the Microsoft 365 suite. and relates also to comments that I think we've had in the chamber about our citizens' desire to be able to contact someone. And I know there is Microsoft 365 functionality that enables everyone to have a phone number associated, a Teams phone number associated with their account, or there are obviously other systems available that allow or mitigate the impact of people working from home because they still have a phone number wherever they're working. And it just, I've maybe missed it in here, but is that something that's being looked at?
Yes, in terms of redirecting phone calls rather to the landline, which might be listed in your email provider, to your actual mobile number.
Well, no, so you can have a digital phone number.
Okay.
So someone dials the number and it will call the Teams account rather than a mobile number or a landline. It's a sort of digital landline.
For the Microsoft team.
No, so an individual.
Okay.
You can have a phone number associated with your Microsoft Teams account.
Sure. So I don't know that.
So maybe it's being looked at, or maybe Santa's looking at that. But Microsoft is not the only product. I think Pauline talked about it, Jabba or something like that.
Yes.
There are obviously other systems out there, but it means that it's not reliant on someone having a mobile phone or mobile phone signal.
Right.
If they're sitting working on their laptop, their council laptop, wherever they are, someone can call that number and it will dial and it will call their Teams phone wherever they are, and that becomes their landline number. They don't need them.
Yeah.
Whether there's a cost, I feel like, sorry. I don't know whether there's a cost associated with maintaining all of the landlines, but actually if you then make it digital, either through Jabba or through Teams, then you don't need those landlines either, because the individual person's phone number follows from wherever they are.
Yeah.
So I must have you throw some light on that.
Yeah. So that's looking at, it's something that was raised, that particular app that you had referred to me has actually been discontinued, and there is quite a large cost to that, but SATI's going to look into that mechanism. It is app related, there will be a cost, but as we say, if you then discontinue a landline, there's potentially any savings of that. I will caveat that by saying that that's what we really quick move. So there's something linked to that 365 that we need to overcome, but certainly it's in the bag of things to do next.
Oh,
Yes, good. Thanks.
keep that line away.
Yeah, just looking at page 262, the question of our workforce management, so we touched on it yesterday, the extent to which we're not fully vacancies, there's one way to control the balancing, if we can control the balancing. The turnover figure, which is about 9.2%, and you say of employees overall, when taking account of all leavers, I should really answer this question. Does that include people who have retired? Are they treated as leavers?
It will be. Yes.
Strikes me that that's kind of a different kettle of fish to those have to move on to another job or another local authority. Then that drives into the question whether we're giving sufficient incentives for people to take early retirement or depart on some other basis. So it might be a win-win situation if we can manage the workforce more actively, and it's possible this 9.2% is misleading because it includes retire.
What you retire and get another job. I get a pension, got another job.
Maybe some more break that.
Okay.
Holly. Thanks for that report, Kevin. Delighted to see the library use is increasing, and with the council now going on a more digital service, is there any thoughts on providing more digital equipment within our libraries? Because that seems to be where most people are going. I see when I pop into Pennington libraries, they're always fully used.
Yeah, there's a range of, as you say, kits, Councillor Kuhn, and also in terms of the range of activities that we deploy through them. We have a whole range of, not just the clothing club, down for the younger customers, and then all the way through to helping people have online access as well. That's for the daily requirements, the Tesco deliveries, or contacting their family who are based further away. So in terms of additional kit, there hasn't been a demand for that. It's really about developing what the next right thing is, really, making it helpful. It's helpful in terms of the digital service and the same remit for So
We're just thinking there's a greater need to access our services when we're.
well, that's happening already, and again, the figures actually do relate to that in here about the customer contact. It shifted away from the contact centre to a greater degree to online. And again, that reflects the investment that we, the council, have made through the Granicus systems as well, and a whole range of e-form applications, and I'm sure Derek's going to talk about that next.
And that's contributed to the increase in footfall in libraries even.
Well, there's less physical footfall.
Yeah.
And it's shifting online, yes, and that is demonstrated in the year-end report.
Here, just kind of following up from David's point, and I suppose I'm going to think across over reports here thinking about housing, but there's certainly an issue in recent years of members of the public or possible applicants on the housing list trying to get hold of housing officers. I think we all agree that's an issue. Just in general, staff working from home, are they taking care of them? Or is there a facility for them to do that?
Yes, that's where I've misunderstood Councillor Virgo's questions, because we are tracking it that way, Councillor Curran, which is, albeit your landline phone, if we're doing this anyway, will divert over to your mobile phone, where we are as well.
So does that keep your mobile phone?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And there are some teams where, again, we've had that range of complaints, and these things have been brought in to be physically in person. Housing is one of them, revenues is another, when terms of productivity or, again, connectivity has been problematic, so they're brought back in as opposed to having that opportunity. So, Derek, you could come in on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, housing officers are all named with their email address and mobile numbers on the website.
That's is that a recent time to do it?
Over the last year and a half.
Thanks. Question. Here, another one, everyone you can't answer, but given we've got about 44,000 followers on social media, are we using that? Do we sell advertising or stuff like that through that? Are we using that to basically quite often see people with that amount of followers, but certainly I hear of them becoming millionaires because they've got that amount of followers. Are we using that to your best to actually attract advertising? I kind of enough of
Yeah, Derek, on the TikTok.
I'm on the wrong screen. Tell me to go back to sleep. That I quite often hear all these people becoming super rich because they've got 40, 50,000 followers. Are we sort of trying to cut into that market?
Yeah, we've not commercialised that at all, but it's certainly something we take away and investigate what the prospects are.
Some of the options have big level.
So was there not a council leader who's released a rap track? I mean, there's a.
Some amount of hits on it. Hits on it.
Leader any more ideas?
It's 5 for your hat. Okay, is there any other questions for Kevin? Kevin, thank you. Before we want to please and perform. Please perform, sorry.
The Chair, the quarter four police services performance report is preceded by a high level annual summary detailing and illustrating the achievements in 24-25. I take this opportunity to formally acknowledge and thank all the teams and colleagues working across police services for the ongoing improvements and significant achievements as detailed, spanning new corporate strategies, operational investments, improving statistics and works. From a refresh of our climate strategy and goals, a new travel strategy, new economic strategy for inclusive growth and progression for Mid-Lothian local development plan 2. Our road services have resurfaced either in-house or managed contractors 23.7 kilometres of carriageway and 4.96 kilometres of footway, all within budget, which is a significant uplift in pothole repairs and permanently patched as well. Fleet and plant replacement, so a £4.67 million capital investment across 23-25, and its more expeditious rollout was hampered by procurement constraints. Our digital depot was rolled out in waste services, and the neighbourhood environment team came fully mobilised. Despite national resource challenges and our commitment to growing our own officers and protective services, the regulatory teams continue to robustly take action where necessary And we've also digitised a number of our common licence applications. For housing, we have seen a 5% increase on applicants on the Common Housing Register since last year, and a 30% increase from 22-23. We've made 586 lets this year, so there's an increase of 6% on last year and 23% from the year before, with relet times again lower than last year, which is testament to the work of housing and BMS colleagues. For BMS, the council housing stock meeting SHQS standards is now 88.35%, and this has risen significantly since last year, given the change in the electrical installation condition reports. 1,082 environmental monitors were installed across 541 of our houses for us to suitably assist and target dampness and mould issues. And the Building Standards Service was awarded its full reappointment by the Scottish Government. Again, we seek to address professional succession constraints and concerns by growing our own officers within the service. Our economic development and business gateway teams have worked with an increased number of business startups this year and ran a number of programmes for established businesses, including expert help and green skills. Our catering team was awarded Bronze Food for Life Award and the Pro-Veg School Plates Bronze Award. With promotional activities over the nutritional guidelines, our school meal uptake continues its positive trend against national averages, while food waste continues to fall. Our Tonzo memberships continue to grow through improved marketing and promotion to the highest ever total of 5,349, which is a 15% increase on last year. Usage figures across our leisure facilities are up 13% and 11% increase in use of our swimming pools. The wider snow sports usage has seen a 4% increase in ski school programme and 3% increase in ski centre usage since last year. Active Schools continues to see participation rise to the tune of 19.5% last year. Holiday programmes continue to do well following their initial pilot. The Newbattle High School won the School Sport Award at the Scottish Sports Awards. And there has been a 13% increase in Midlothian Active Choices attendees and an 18% increase in new referrals. I've rattled through that given the time constraints that we have. Happy to take them.
Thanks for that. She concluded on the questions. Abandoned vehicles. Do we know how much it costs us to store and dispose of? Is there any income stream?
There's no income stream that we've diverted away from paying for the service, where the scrap metal dealer now uplifts stores and it's local stores.
Trades, our trade staff, are they completely across a digital system yet, so the deployment?
Reactive health maintenance service have moved to the PDA system, which will benefit of that through invoicing, through job management, performance, plan, project work, still very much green slip.
Okay, and just looking forward to that emotional year, but we're looking to digitise that then, or?
As part of the business maintenance, building maintenance service, phase one closure report, if elected members are comfortable and move to phase two, that would be part of the phase two project.
Thanks. And finally, just thinking about commercial, offering for the commercial waste. Is I still feel that Environment's got this, anybody we don't sort of make enough profiles on that we do offer that commercial waste uplift service. Is there any, just thinking about the box, is there any way we can incorporate that into commercial lengths to have an additional charge on the length where we can provide that waste service?
Provided it covers the landfill tax, etc., it is something that we can incorporate. We do encourage all our tenants to sign up. We do have a community trade waste officer that does a multitude of things, but has been engaging with business. Business uptake in terms of commercial trade uplifts has increased over the last few months. And again, I'm happy to report back on where we were, where we've got to in terms of trade waste, because there's a lot of hidden numbers behind the calculation as to what's needed to wash its face, generate that income, etc., because it's all consumed within the current service. But happy to have that the numbers crunched and reported back.
I'm just thinking out loud, so we've got commercial lets, then we have a responsibility in each of the tenants of disposing of waste
Yes.
accordingly. I'm just wondering if we could go down the route legally incorporating that within the tenancy agreements. Yeah, you know, there's, and take it wholly as a 1 month payment, but included in that is uplift commercial.
Yeah, given the commerciality of it, I'd be conscious about monopolising that particular piece. However, I can discuss with legal. There are benefits in terms of the local authority managing commercial waste in the sense of recycling glass, etc. Where we would be looking to, ensure that that was separated out. There was other commercial trade operators or waste operators would be looking at a tonnage basis, whereas we're very much in the diversify, recycling, etc.
It's not asking, just what.
Yeah, thank you.
David, get pulled. David?
Yes, Netflix. Does anyone else know what I'm talking about? No. No, Department Q.
Should I just now do this spoiler?
I'm not going to, no spoilers here, other than to say it's absolutely fantastic. It's one of the best programmes that I've watched in a long time. And I was really shocked to see Vogrie featuring it, and I didn't know that was going to happen. Yeah, Vogrie, yes.
I finished it this weekend.
Yeah. There's the big place where the brothers kept. Yeah, throws the telly out the window. Yeah, that's great.
Got it.
Yeah. I'm not going to say any more. I'm not saying any more than that. Everybody dies. And I was quite surprised when I was like doing a wee Google search on where was it filmed? Because obviously we can recognise, like Morton Hall, Crematorium, and other places. It didn't mention Midlothian at all, so I just wondering if we could maybe make up more of a song and dance about it, because like I say, I just think it was it was quite a shock actually sitting watching it going, that can be Vogrie, and there you go. And there might be other places that I've missed, because East Lothian seem to be, look, this is ours and that pub's ours and this is ours.
It might actually be now while they were filming it.
It's even worse. That's all, Derek, thank you.
Thank you. In terms of income generation and estate management, that did generate an income, and in terms of enhancing one of our assets, then be able to move on to for a commercial let, as others may be aware of the Bubbling Toad, and again that will generate significant footfall to Vogrie Country Park and the house.
Very excited about the Bubbling Toad.
Polly?
Thanks, Derek. From Netflix to the wonderful world of recycling. Derek, I'm just concerned about how many loads are spoilt due to people putting the incorrect things in the recycling bins. And I'm wondering, is it possible, or is it financially viable to have a sticker to go on top of the bins to actually say what should go in and some things that shouldn't go in at the same time?
Councillor Winchester, happy to publicise that as far and wide as possible. Contaminated loads do impact on recycling figures. We've been saying that, and it does come at a cost in terms of disposal. Again, we'll look at the best way of doing that, printing off thousands of stickers from flags in the face of our climate agenda, but at the same time, if we can look at other ways of being able to incorporate that in other public messaging ways, then we'll go on.
Peter?
Thanks, Chair, and appreciate this. This is maybe not the time or the place to get into the weeds around it, but I'm curious about the building maintenance service. I know there was you've been working to improve it, so I'm maybe just looking for a bit more detail around that, not here, but separate to that. Because I mean, it's great to say, that the number of jobs completed internally was 35,465, less than last year. But I don't know what that really means. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Does that mean more were done externally? what's the feedback on those completed jobs, what's the success rate, all that kind of stuff, what's the revisit on all that sort. So looking for a bit more detail on that. That may be forthcoming, you may be planning for that, but I'd like to see a bit more of that. Beyond that, some really, really positive stuff in there. Again, a whole heap of work clearly gone on to make all this happen. Really positive on the terms of memberships and the other leisure stuff. I'm really looking forward to seeing how kind of your income, max income generation projects will it build on and enhance the successes that this report is that. Thank you.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of PR issues coming up here for you. The one that I note is the really striking improvement on the pothole repairs. There would be cross-council support for the JCB terminator. Can we make sure we get this out to the public? I think all councillors had a lot of grief from, oh, you've given yourself a pay rise, but you don't ever fill in the potholes, which is clearly not the case. Do we have data about what percentage of Midland roads are still below par? I know the Scottish one is roughly 40% or has been.
Yeah, we get the roads condition index report, and so I can bring that again to Kevin and PRS, happy to share that. Happy to do more. One of the action logs will be within the action log items. Was about publicising the residential streets programme and where we're going, etc. That should be online in the next week or two. Just with a disclaimer that other priorities may come in and may get pushed back. So all of that, as well as the awful work can be on the website, be published, and it will also help their red line Fridays as well.
Hello, Derek. Can I just ask a very good question, which I should probably know the answer to? It's just an email I had last night from a constituent. Are some gyms now closed at the weekends?
So the west side pools close at an earlier time at 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock on a Friday and 4 o'clock at the weekend. Gore Bridge is closed at the weekend.
Oh, completely at the weekend. And is that permanent?
That's as part of this review that we're currently doing in terms of the Gore Bridge hub. But for now, the dry side is closed at the weekend.
Can I offer it? Have any hope that it will reopen?
When we look to align the library service that goes ahead with the library service and the leisure centre within the leisure centre as that proposal, we would look to retain some form of leisure facility within that, because we then be able to work the economies of scale of both library staff and the leisure staff.
Right. Okay, that's same with me now. Thank you. Derek, a couple of things have been raised. One was a big pothole. I think the name dispute the social media with photographs still never been on the pothole for life. Because what happens is everybody else then gets an email saying it's not in my area. So this is not unfortunate. But we're still waiting on this one, this report that we continue to get. We're going to get we've only got one pothole pro. It works less than 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and it sits in a year the rest of the time. Yeah. It's the same with the gully waters. We're constantly talking about blocked drains and that. We've got a pile of very high cost capital machinery lying, working about 30 hours a week. 30 hours a week. Can we know when we're going to get this report back? Whether we're going to get this on a 4 or over 12 or back shifts, night shifts, what have you.
So the actual operational stats are available. So for example, the pothole pro is budgeted to work 48 weeks in the year. There's 2 weeks downtime for maintenance spread across the year, 2 weeks when the quarry's shut because you need the material for dealing with the potholes. It generates X amount, etc. etc. All that is there. It's now what we're working on is the deployment aspect. So within neighbourhood services, what a 4-day week would be. What the NCAP technology, for example, all weekend work comes through me for approval. There's been no missed business had to be caught up on since NCAP technology was brought online. We still do voice work, we still got CA sites to deal with and manage, etc. There's been no missed bins. So all that is coming through. In terms of the collateral, in terms of what the impacts may be, the consequentials of if you move to a 4-day week for waste services services, for example, what does that then mean for mechanic service? That you might still have green space working a 5-day week, and what that means for plant mechanics, etc. So it's actually got a wee bit more. We're going down several rabbit holes to provide this report. I can provide the overall operational figures for you and what we're currently doing, but that review aspect is taking a bit of time.
I'm being honest here, Derek, sitting here working any imagination, you never in council were doing this and have been doing this for years. You know, you go to Edinburgh and the road sweepers and the motors are out at the night shift at the weekend. Main roads are done overnight and that, etc. Even bin collections are done on the main roads overnight and that when it's quiet and to stop congestion, etc. So it's all there. All I have to do is actually pick up something here and say, right, well, how do you do it? And replicate that. In fact, there might be a better way of working with the maintenance. Could we have a maintenance place that we use jointly, etc. But I think we really need to start getting something back to say, you know, if you're paying hundreds of thousands of pounds for a plan, that we actually start using it, because you talk about having it's generally used for 7:30 to 4 o'clock, Monday to Thursday and to 1 o'clock on Friday, and then it sits there unless there's weekend work, which is overtime. Whereas if we had, it creates more employment, but we're putting out back shifts and night shifts, it can actually deliver a better service. You can get all your main roads and all that, you can get gullies cleared, you can get potholes done when there's no traffic on them.
But when we start drawing comparisons with other authorities, for example, if they're 7-day week, they've got no contingency for any storm event, for any severe weather episodes. People's bins last to stay out for weeks on end until they get round and caught up. Maybe an authority said that the pothole pro could only work 6 months a year. So I think we need to be careful in terms of what we're comparing and contrasting, because in terms of our performance and results, it's really important.
Like to see that report. Ollie. Thanks, Jim. Derek, thanks for that report. My issue is, my question to you, housing. Surprised to not housing. Most of the constituency come to see me, it's about housing. 75% of the cases are housing. Now, I'm quite intrigued with the housing list here. In this report, I don't know when this report is compiled, but we're up to over 6,000. With the housing stock about what, 7.5, 7.7. The way this is going, in the next 3 or 4 years, a waiting list is going to exceed our housing stock. At what time do we declare a housing emergency? Which I've looked into the housing emergency and what it actually does. All it seems to do is stop neighbouring authorities signposting them to us here in Midlothian, which is still happening because there's no declaration being made. I don't know what the criteria is, Chair, and I don't wish to elaborate on it, but it seems to me our housing waiting list in time is going to exceed our housing stock.
Yep, and you know, in terms of housing service operational management, the team again is responding. Look at stats. We're turning the voice out quicker than ever. Our tenancy sustainment rate is in its 90%. The stats again another action log item in terms of percentages, etc. In terms of our social housing stock, stats, not a briefing note in the next week to close that one off, and it will show in terms of our re-let times where we are, where we're placed in Scotland, we've got sustainment. That's what makes it difficult. We get other areas in Scotland where people are happy to keep moving and that frees it up. But for us to come in Midlothian and they're happy to stay where they are, you know, in terms of the standard of the housing that they receive. In terms of housing crisis and a declaration, there is, you know, the national perspective. Other neighbouring authorities have declared. In terms of our overall performance, I don't think we're there quite yet. In terms of how many times we've breached the accommodation orders, etc., we're nowhere near that, despite that price figure that you mentioned.
If you declare a house in emergency, then you can only issue houses to homeless people, which would take everybody from the list. It's no cost of homeless.
Well, the research I did, Chair, was that it would stop other authorities signposting up there.
It also means that the general list would just sit there.
All right. No, it's another
Any
question.
other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Proposing council year then for 4 days.
Sometimes will be brief. So this quarter four report also includes the balanced scorecard and the year-end summary and complements the individual service reports. We'll also be presenting the CPP annual report to council in June. That was approved at the CPP board last week. And our collated annual report on pages 351 to 379 celebrates the many, many achievements over the course of this year by members. So like other chief of staff said today, this is the final performance report of the year. My thanks to all staff and our partners for their hard work over the course of the performance year 24-25. So thank you, Chair, and back to the any questions.
Questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you all for your attendance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.